Hello and welcome to the Tech Guys AM Court. Hello again and welcome to the Tech Guys AM Court. I am Pete the Tech Guy. Half a door will travel, although today I don't have to travel farther than my own bedroom for the AM Court, which I am happy to share with you. You can see we have a new microphone because we had a problem with one last time, the time before last. So we're here for the next hour. We are taking your calls, assuming it works. The number is 8889-FEDORA. You might remember that from the old radio show. I've programmed it to dial onto my home phone. So if you call in, the 800 number, it'll convert to my home phone. I'll put you on speaker. We'll see if it works. If it doesn't work, well, that's life. And it'll just be a plain old YouTube live stream podcast. Well, several things to talk about today, and I want to start with my surprise at Nancy Pelosi. And the reason why I'm so surprised at Nancy Pelosi is, she just turned 80 yesterday, and happy birthday to her, making it to 80s. Granted, these days it's not as big a deal, but my father only made it 65, so 80 is pretty good. Congratulations to act and so forth, and a healthy life to you, although political failure I wish you, but a healthy life. And you got children and grandchildren and wealth. You got everything you need. So don't worry about that. Connection. Got the word that the connection is on. They're trying to reconnect. The connection is unstable. Let's see how unstable it remains. Okay, it's no longer unstable. So we must be getting a few people in. Let me send. Much easier to do when you're not holding the mic. It's nice to be able to do this in the morning when I'm not half asleep after a long week of work. Yes, my job has been considered vital, so I am working a full shift. My son, being a guy at Market Basket, grocery chain, he's in the deli department full time, so he is vital. And of course, my wife, being a registered nurse at a nursing home, is about as vital as you can get. But this is my day off, and happy to spend the start of my day off with you. But let's get back to Pelosi again. One thing about Nancy Pelosi over the years is that she has usually got good political instincts in terms of she can usually twist the knife well. Pelosi has a low cunning. And part of that comes from a lot of years' experience. Sort of like Tom Brady, play quarterback for 20 years, you learn certain things. And I was really surprised, and I mean really surprised, when I saw the move to block the relief bill. Now, let's be blunt about this. This relief bill is 800, 900 pages long. There are probably things in this bill that I will not like. But you've got, 100 senators, you've got Democrats, you've got Republicans, you've got conservatives, you've got liberals, you've got all these, you've got to make compromises. So there are probably things in this bill I don't care for. There are things that are worth criticizing. But we're in a crisis. There's the relief measures are necessary. And just to address those who keep, you're a conservative, how come you're suddenly saying we can send all this money to people? Well, I also believe that while I don't want people to take a high-powered fire hose and spray it on my house on a daily basis, if my house is actually on fire, I don't have a problem with it. And this is one of those cases. So you had this bill, you had it all ready to go. And like I said, 800 pages, you really should read it. It's available online. Justin Amish tweeted it out. And I really expected that, this would pass the Senate easily because they had negotiated it for a while. Then it would go to the House. There'll be some debate, maybe a few people voting against because, enough would vote for it that it would pass. But you'll have a few against because, you got a population of 330 million. You got 435 members of the House. You can have a few who didn't like it. And then Pelosi suddenly pulls the plug. And the amazing thing is it's Pelosi who pulls the plug in the Senate. And the senators, the Democrat senators, voted in lockstep. When that cloture vote came at 47-47, it was something to see the Republicans in the Senate just lose it. They could not believe their eyes. They just couldn't believe it. And you saw some people who were normally very moderate, like Susan Collins is very famous for being moderate. She just couldn't believe it. And you had Schumer objecting to individual senators speaking. It was astounding. And the most astounding part about it is that it was an unenforced error. Pelosi normally does not make errors this big, but her caucus got to and said, listen, they have to pass this relief bill. People are expecting relief. And I got to tell you, just to give as a personal side, last week at my work, we had a meeting. At 5 o'clock I work 3:30 to midnight at a warehouse. And at 5 o'clock, they called a meeting to let everybody know that they were going to let us go a little early that week because one of the key shipments we needed didn't come in. We just didn't have the work. So we're going to go home. And people were over there. Oh, how are we going to make this? How are we going to make that? But also we had people who were saying, well, and they were asking all kinds of questions. The meeting was mostly in Spanish because I'm the only English speaker there. And one of them was talking about, well, what about the money that the government's going to be sending us? They didn't know much about politics, but boy, they knew that the government was going to be sending the money over the coronavirus. So you had people who were expecting help, and some who, like the waitresses and so forth. If you are a person who lives on tips, you really need that money. You really need that money because you're just burning right now. So that $1,500, and a lot of people are making fun. Oh, $1,500. Yeah, the Kennedy Center is getting $25 million. Well, you know what? $1,500 is a couple of weeks' pay for some people, maybe 3 weeks for someone who's not making a lot, depending on what state you're in. And if you haven't been getting paid, that's a lot of money. When you need, it's like the old line from the movie The Magnificent Seven. You'll remember Charles Bronson's cutting wood. And Steve McQueen and Yul Brynner come up to him, and they talk about, yeah, I heard you got $500 for this job, and you got $1,000 for that job. Yeah, you cost a lot. Yeah, I cost a lot. And he says the offer is $25. And Bronson's chopping wood, and he looks at them. Right now, $25 is a lot. If you haven't been getting a paycheck, $1,500 is a lot. And even if you are regularly getting a paycheck, that's $1,500 that's going straight to the credit cards. So that I'm going to drop some of my debt, which is very good. And other people will probably do the same. Some will buy a few things and so forth. But it's going to make a difference to people. Well, they decided we are going to put every single liberal wet dream, if you'll pardon my language, out there on this bill and kill the Senate version. And then we're going to pass our bill, and we're going to be able to say, oh, the Republicans are blocking relief. And, this plan might have worked 25 years ago when there was no internet, when you only had the mainstream media, because the mainstream media was ready to play along. You'll remember the New York, it was so shocked everybody that the New York Times first headline was Democrats block relief bill. And on TV, Democrats block relief bill. It took about, I think, 6 hours or 8 hours for them to slowly change their headlines to try and blame Republicans because they did not expect it. This wasn't coordinated as stuff like this normally is. You'll remember Rush Limbaugh often does his various memes where he'll play a montage of people on the TV or radio saying the same thing over and over and over again because they're all, they're all trying to convey a single message. Well, they weren't ready for this. And it just caught everyone flat-footed. And the people who were waiting for this money, businesses who need relief and so forth, they went batshit. And now imagine if you are a Democrat in a swing state like Pennsylvania. You just won election in the midterms because generally the president loses some seats in a midterm after just being elected. And suddenly, and remember, this was going to be done by unanimous consent because most of them are home. And you suddenly hear that Pelosi has blocked this, and you are getting feedback like, what are you doing to me? How are you actually doing this? And Pelosi had to backtrack very quickly. And when the bill finally came up in the Senate for a vote, the vote was 96-0, I believe. And that vote was so telling because, remember, every single Democrat who voted for that bill, with the possible exception of Collins, because in Alabama, because McConnell brought it up a second time. He brought it up at during the day so they could have so the people could see them vote against it a second time. McConnell, they all voted against it. They all voted to block it just a few days ago. So now the entire U.S. Senate, every Democrat in the Senate, was exposed as being Pelosi's puppet. Now, you don't want to look like Pelosi's puppet. Now, Collins in Alabama changed his vote for the second time because he certainly doesn't want to look like Pelosi's puppet. He's going to have a hard enough time climbing that hill to begin with for re-election. He's not facing Roy Moore anymore. But it's just an amazing, amazing thing. And again, 25 years ago, in the pre-internet days, in the days before I could do a podcast like this, Pelosi might have gotten away with it. And the media would have backed her up, but she didn't. And the fact that she didn't is an amazing and wonderful thing. And now they're backtracking. The actual vote is going to be today. I don't know if they're going to call the full House into session. I don't know if they're going to just try and do a pro forma session. They might. But the actual vote is going to be today, and it's almost certainly going to pass. And I know that AOC has promised to, object and make people give a vote and so forth. And I don't mind an on-the-record vote. I didn't mind it being delayed a day because, this is a lot of money being spent. $2 trillion is being spent. And it's still 800 pages. It's not the 1,100, then 1,500 that the Pelosi had with every single liberal goodie in it. But it's 1,100 pages. It's 800 pages. And, I'm glad that they had a day to try and read it if they wanted to read it. I doubt that many of them tried, but it is proper for this to be a recorded vote. Yes, many of the Democrats who are struggling to keep their seats will point to the vote. I voted for this. Don't say that I was blocked. I voted for it when it came up. Well, so did every Democrat in the Senate the final time around. It's still going to burn you. And you deserve to be burnt on this. But that's a whole other story. But regardless of what the final vote number is, it's the type of era. This is a game-changing era. And the reason why it's a game-changing era is, first of all, it's completely unexpected. Nobody saw this coming. Nobody saw Pelosi making this mistake coming. As I said earlier, the media didn't see it. The other Democrats didn't see it. People just did not see it coming. And because of that, because of their shock, because of their surprise, it got so much play, and people found out really fast. I mean, you got a YouTube channel saying people just got around, and it's going to be now. Maybe with some luck for the Democrats, this will be forgotten when it comes time for election day to come around. But a lot of people are going to remember this, and it is just an incredible mistake. And I would not have thought that Nancy Pelosi would have made this mistake. If you would ask me last week if Pelosi would have made this mistake, I was like, never in a million years. But she did. And in fact, I shouldn't have been as surprised now that I think about it, because this is really the same mistake she made on impeachment. Because she tried to hold back impeachment for a very long time because she understood that it was a loser. But the liberals in her caucus kept pushing. Or the ultra liberals, even more ultra liberal than her, kept pushing, and she finally gave in. This time it was the Congressional Black Caucus, a member of there, who pushed it. And I think that might be why she was willing to make this mistake. And, I still can't, I'm a little bit less surprised the more I think about it now, but still, it's an unenforced error. It's the type of error that people should not make. And I'm going to read to you. I'm going to turn over here. I've got my emergency backup laptop. Over here, you've got I'm doing the live stream from one laptop. And you'll notice every now and then I move because I'm trying to tweet things out on Twitter to get more people in here. But I have my emergency backup laptop here. And I have a piece up from Don Suber, who, if you're not reading Don Suber, you've got to be reading Don Suber. Don Suber is one of the most sane voices on the internet. He has a couple of books written on Trump that, frankly, I should have written myself. but I'm a lazier guy than he is, unfortunately for me. Or I would have had I'd have a few more bucks in my pocket and would be doing this full time. Well, I want to read you this piece from Suber because it's just classic. It's called The Pelosi Virus. And here's what it says. Congratulations. In fact, that's right. It's a laptop, so I can show you. This is the piece at Don Schuber's site. Go to that site, check it out yourself as well. But I'm going to read it to you right now if you don't want to rush over there today. But go there every day. He's always worth a read. Congratulations to Nancy Pelosi for owning the COVID-19. It is just the latest in a series of missteps she's made under President Donald John Trump. I did not think she could top impeachment, but by holding up the COVID-19 relief, the Democrat representative of Poop City, San Francisco, may have joined Red China as the villain in the crisis, which has killed 1,000 Americans, closed the economy, sunk the stock market, and thrown millions of workers into the unemployment office. In fact, if you look at the unemployment claims number, it's like my traffic numbers when an Instalance comes. When an instant, my traffic's usually fairly steady, then comes an Instalance and that's what the unemployment numbers look like in terms of claims. If you see this, the spike is incredible. The Senate agreed to the relief package. McConnell was set to vote and send it to the House. Enter Wiley E. Pelosi. She flew in from the West Coast with a new plan of more than 1,000 pages. Among her demands was affirmative action in corporate boardrooms, protection for government union officials, and a ban on enforcing immigration laws. Now, though, actually, if you're ignoring laws, would you actually pay attention to a ban on enforcing those laws? So, I mean, that's another story over there. Back to the piece. James S. Robbins wrote in USA Today, perhaps the most troubling sections of the bill are under the rubric American Coronavirus COVID-19 Election Safety and Security Access Act. This section would impose requirements on states for early voting, voting by mail, required mailing of absentee ballots to everyone, ballot harvesting, i.e. having third parties deliver absentee ballots, which, I mean, this is all how do I do fraud. The Democrats have become the how do I do fraud party. You can't put it any other way. Let's see, where was I? Safety registration and other practices which undermine confidence in the integrity of the ballot. In these days of increasing threats to election security, we should be moving rapidly back to in-person paper ballots, but this bill would be a radical step in the wrong direction. In short, she demanded passage of half her socialist agenda in exchange for saving the economy. This is what we call blackmail, by the way. Finally, she had President Donald Roadrunner Trump right where she wanted him, just like she did when she tore up his State of the Union speech, just like she did when she delayed a previous State of the Union speech and black-clapped him, just as she did when she announced the DACA deal without the wall, just as she did when she announced a deal on a red flag law on gun owners, just as she did when she announced she would give zero funds to build the wall. Meep, meep. Republicans were having none of this. National Republican Congressional Committee spokesman Michael McAdams said, quote, people are dying and all Nancy Pelosi and Democrats can focus on is ripping off the American taxpayer to help pay for their liberal wish list of government handouts. It was so awful that the Washington Post ran a column, Nancy Pelosi uses coronavirus to put on some kabuki theater. Ted Cruz said earlier, today 102 Americans died while the Democrats blocked consideration of this bill. One Texan died with it, while this chamber decided not to show up to work and do their job. But Pelosi does not act alone. She does the bidding of AOC, Slim Jerry Nadler, and the totally sane Adam Schiff. Democrats can now take the blame for their attempt to sabotage efforts to bring back the economy by the author of The Art of the Comeback. With more than 3 million people losing their jobs to the virus in 1 week, this delay should harm the party. We will see. Cruz said one of the reasons Democrats think they will get away with this is they expect the media to be utterly complicit. He cited the New York Times changing their headline from, quote, Democrats block action on $1.8 trillion stimulus to partisan divide threatens deal on rescue bill. Cruz is correct. The press often calls her the smartest woman in Washington. In doing so, they libeled every other woman in the town. That's pretty much it. I mean, that was really stupid. I mean, I cannot, the degrees of stupid that this is staggering. But the vote is today. We're going to see how that vote goes. God help the Democrats if this vote does not work. God help the Democrats if they do not, if this doesn't get passed. It's just amazing. It really is amazing. Well, now topic number 2, the absence of sports. And one of the things I do when I drive into work, sometimes I'll listen to my own Catholic radio station when I drive into work, but I got to tell you, I'm a sports junkie. I'm a baseball junkie particular, and anyone who follows my Twitter stream knows it because I've been pushing my Dynasty Online Baseball League, and I'm going to push it right now just as an interlude. And they don't pay me anything for this. I just love the game. The game is Dynasty Baseball Online. I'm running 2 online leagues. They're offering a free month with the code USA2. So join, either play in their own tournaments or start your own league or whatever, or join one of my 2 leagues. We have the all-time great league. I've got 9 spots left out of the 24 we had, the others that are currently being played by computer players, or my all-pathetic league, which is the league of 16 teams, all that lost 100 games in a season. So see if you can make the best of the worst. The best of the worst. There's 8 teams left there. We're 100 games into that season. We're only 6 to 12 games into the other season. Actually, I have 3 games tonight. I might try and play after this podcast is done. But it's a great thing. If you have a baseball fan friend, share it. It's wonderful. And again, the free month, you can sign up for it through the 31st. Once March is over, the free month is over unless they extend it. And maybe I should ask them for some advertising dollars because I'm constantly pushing this stuff. But anyways, I thought that sports radio would die. And it hasn't. I mean, they're still talking a lot of it. Of course, here in New England, we have the advantage of we had the Tom Brady signing business, which had all the oxygen anyways. And we had the Red Sox looking very bad this year. So the delay in the season suddenly helps us in that regard. But the lack of sports has been really hard. And I keep thinking of when the Brooklyn Dodgers moved out of Brooklyn to LA, and how people there were saying it's harder to lose your church, to lose your sports team than your church. And the sports it's very hard losing sports because it was a diversion. And unlike a movie, which has a definite beginning, middle, and end, and there are plenty of good movies to watch. By the way, here's one that you probably have never seen. One of John Wayne's first movies. It never caught on. It's called The Big Trail. And he didn't really break out as a star till 10 years later in Stagecoach, but a great picture to check it out. And another great movie that I happen to have next to me. I've got, if you're looking over my shoulder, you can see the Lord of the Rings pictures there. Good thing to binge. But Captain Horatio Hornblower. The screenplay was written by the author of the book, so the screenplay is pretty good. So check that out. So, but you have, there are movies, there are books. Here's Stacey McCain's book. We're gonna push that for a second. Sex Trouble, essays on radical feminism and the war against human nature. And we're starting to win this war because of the coronavirus, simply because reality is kicking in. And I'm going to get to that more in the last segment. But sports as a diversion, unless we're talking like the 1919 scandal, you don't know what's going to happen. Every single day, anything could happen. Even the 1962 New York Mets won 40 times when they and lost 120. But once out of every 4 games, they managed to win. So you never knew what was going to happen. It was something new. It was something exciting. And it's a unifying factor. I wouldn't vote for Elizabeth Warren if my life depended on it, but we're both going to cheer for the Red Sox. Sports is a unifying factor in the way that religion can be. It crosses the line between cultures. It crosses the line between wealth. It crosses the line between these things. Sports unifies us, and the lack of sports has been painful. But sports radio still goes on because people want to talk about things. And people who can't, since they can't talk about sports, they talk about the lack of sports. But I think that as soon as possible, it would be a good thing to have sports return, even if it means empty arenas. If you have players who've been tested, frankly, NBA players, baseball players, hockey players, they're probably the most likely to get through the virus okay. They're all generally young, other than Tom Brady, of course. They're all at the peak of health. In terms of a subset of people, they're probably the healthiest and most likely to shake this stuff off. The sooner sports are back, the better, because it will unify us and it will help get us through what's going to be a tough month or so. I mean, I know that the president is talking about trying to get us back open by Easter. Maybe some places can do that. Maybe some places can't. But the sooner that we have sporting events, even if you're playing to empty arenas, and I know the owners don't want to play to empty arenas because that's money that you won't make up. If things are delayed, you can still get fans in the seats, but if they're empty arenas, you can't. But I think the sooner this stuff is back, the better, because Americans need diversion. And Americans need a diversion whose ending is in doubt. And that's what sports is. So a lot of people who don't go for sports, but that's really the big thing about sports. It's a diversion where the ending is always in doubt. You don't know what's going to happen. And just a reminder, if you're watching, 8889-FEDORA is the phone number, 8889-FEDORA, if you want to try and call in. I've got actually, you got 4 minutes to call in because the phone number I only have the phone number set to this for a half hour a day on this day. It only comes on during Fridays. So this was your chance to call in. We'd see if the phone system worked. If it didn't, oh well. But yeah, I think sports needs to come back. And I also think, by the way, the Patriots are going to do worse than expected, and Brady is going to do better than expected, because everyone's forgetting the Patriots are going to be playing a first place schedule because they finished first, because that's how they weighted in football. And Tom Brady is going to play against, I think, a second or third place schedule. And that is going to be the first time he has not played versus a first place schedule since 2009. I think he's going to just ravage. I think they might get to 13 wins in Tampa Bay, and I'm waiting to see if a sports station here decides to carry the Tampa Bay games. I would do that if I were them. Speaking of one other things they should do, if I was Design Depot and Pursue the Pennant, the company that makes Dynasty Baseball, I would get a hold of the various radio networks that host baseball games, have a person from their talk radio shows assign them each a team and play a small season and let them talk about that. That would be a lot of fun for those of you who are gamers who are into that stuff. All right, our final topic is something that actually came to me today when I woke up, and I hadn't written a post because the night I'd only gotten 3 hours sleep the day before. I put in a full shift. I was really tired. So I didn't have a chance to write a post. And I want to read you, this was my lead post for today. I want to read this to you. I know you can go to the site, DaTechGuyBlog.com, and read it, but I want to read it and comment on it. And the title of the post is "Seeing America in This Crisis Through My Father's Eyes and Liking What I See." And it begins with a quote from Stonewall Jackson, who says, "Whoever does not see the hand of God in this is blind, sir, blind." And some people might say, well, yeah, Jackson said that, but the South ended up losing. Well, I actually have a theory on that. I think the hand of God, it was the South winning long enough to force Lincoln to end slavery. Once emancipation, I don't think it's a coincidence that Stonewall was accidentally killed by his own men after the Emancipation Proclamation went into effect. And once it did, and once that job was done, the tide turned and the Union started to win. But again, that's me. But here's this post. I was reading Sarah Hoyt's list of predictions when I woke up first thing this morning concerning how the reverberations of this crisis will treat us over time. Some good, some not so good. And I thought of my parents and how their lives shaped me. My parents, as Depression-era people, and as children of people who basically had little or nothing, but what they grew or produced themselves, did not waste, did not splurge. Well, my dad would try to splurge for mom, but it just wasn't her nature to need or want anything more than to be at home with her children and grandchildren around her. And had a profound sense of gratitude for all the good life brought them, because, believe me, they had plenty of bad to deal with. And the most dangerous place to be when near them was as a threat to their family in any form. Any man who purposely put themselves in that spot was taking his life into his hands. And I didn't include many details along those lines, but believe me, it's true. You did not want to be a physical threat to our family, to my mom or dad's children. You were taking your life into your hands. They were also quite different in their outlook towards people. Dad was a natural optimist. Mom was a realist. Dad was always willing to take a chance, too willing sometimes. He gambled a lot. And that was a problem that I'm not going to go into right here. Oh, and that's not in the post. You can tell when I'm not reading from the post. Mom was a person who played everything close to the vest. Dad couldn't bear to see people in pain or a want if he could help. For example, when he got a plow for his truck, he would disappear for hours because he wouldn't just plow the yard. He'd plow everybody on the street, and then he'd drive out. Because if he knew you needed to be dug out, it was unthinkable to him not to do it when he had a plow handy. Mom would make sure the house was taken care of first and the next egg secured before quietly offering her hand. Dad was chivalrous to a fault. No door for a woman was ever left unheld. No kid crying ever left without a piece of chocolate. No guy down on his luck to be passed without being given a buck or two, even if it was his last one. And no person stranded by the side of the road to be untowed if it was a woman, and if it was a woman, children. He'd usually get them towed to a friend who would take care of them either at cost or for nothing. Mom was always unfailingly proper and polite, but minded her own business and never volunteered advice to a friend unless explicitly asked. Dad was universally loved, and when he died too young at 65, the funeral home was overrun with people to a point I haven't seen since the death of Mike Romano. Mom was universally respected, and her wake, despite taking place in 2012, a full quarter century after her husband's, took place in her own home, in the room she died in, with her very large immediate family, children, grandchildren, and so forth, in attendance. A private person to the very end. Beyond all this, there was one other trait they shared. In any kind of crisis, either or both of them were the best people to have around. I never saw either fail to rise to the occasion in any crisis, personal or public. The only difference being that Mom's hand, being full-blooded Sicilian, would be less visible to others when deployed. In my youth, I saw the best traits mixed by many in their generation. But as I've grown older, I've seen all of my mother's family die, and only one sister and brother-in-law of my father's family still alive. They're both in their 90s, by the way. And still retrain those, and those retaining those traits have become rare to the point of non-existence. That's because those traits were built on a culture that had seen death and trouble up close and had handled them so thoroughly that their children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren thought that peace, comfort, and safety were the norm in a society rather than the incredible historical exception made only possible by the genius of America and the effects of her people. This is one of my own bugaboos, that life is inherently tough. And the peace and prosperity of America is a unique feature of America. This does not happen normally. And I want to say it again, this is not normal. America's peace, America's freedoms, America's prosperity, even the prosperity we had in the days when the flu epidemics were more deadly than this one, and the days when you didn't have, when you had a outhouse and so forth, instead of running water in your toilet and so forth, or pumps and like. It was the exception rather than the rule in society. If you're an American living right now, you are the 1% of human existence. You are. You just plain are. Even if you're one of the poorest of Americans, you are part of that 1% because you have a life that most people wouldn't dream of. Now back to the piece. And having seen the errors that this assumption has caused, particularly over the last 20 years, I have been remarkably delighted over the last month with my fellow Americans. With the exception of a few hoarders and some idiots, I've seen a nation, a community that has done rather well in showing its best face when the chips are down. From the hardworking staff at the local grocery stores to the folks at the local diner worried about being able to make it, to folks carrying on at their place of work with a mask on their face, I've seen Americans rising to the occasion, bending, not breaking. And you've probably seen that too. The average American has really shown in this crisis. And you see a lot of innovation. You see a lot of people, thinking on their feet. Americans think on their feet, and they have the freedom to act on their feet, that's the great thing about America. America gives people the freedom to act. And the fact that Americans can act on their feet and do great things, solve great problems, and not necessarily have to wait on government to solve them is so, so wonderful. I can't stress it enough. I just can't stress it enough. And if you read history, and I urge you to find a history book written before 1970, written before the left got their hands on history and perverted it, and read how amazing America is compared to everything. We are so freaking lucky, and we just don't know it. We just don't know it, and it's frustrating sometimes. It's so frustrating that we don't know it. It drives me nuts. Back to the article. Even in the field of politics, with some exceptions, the one that I brought up at the beginning of the show, which must be expected, I've seen people willing to lead and do the hard work in concert with others. I've seen folks willing to deal with realities on the ground, even when their personal philosophies may contradict with them. Sometimes they're forced out of their bubbles by events, sometimes with great reluctance, but on the whole, reality has been respected and actions have been done accordingly. And the local governors have done very well too. Like I'm lukewarm on Charlie Baker, particularly over abortion and social issues and such, but he has done very well. The New Hampshire governor has done very well. There's very few big mistakes going on out there. And I think letting governors make decisions on a local level has been very good. Some states are going to suffer for it. I think Nevada's governor's not done all that well, but again, that's my opinion. But Newsom in California has done much better, and I think you've seen. I want to bring this up about Newsom. You've seen him do things that I think he would have liked to have done, but could not get away with politically. Like some of the cleanup and some of the stuff with the homeless. Politically, it's been people could lose an election if they took care of the problems of the poop in the street and so forth. I think in California, we've seen the governor take advantage of this crisis to do things that he knows actually needed to be done, but he could not get away with politically before, like some of the stuff in San Francisco. We haven't seen as much of that from LA on the local level, which is a sad thing. But again, this is a big country with 330 million people. Even if 1% are crazy, that's 3 million people. And if 1/10 or 100% of 1% are absolutely bonkers, that's 30,000 people. That's a lot of people. When all of this, back to the piece again, when all of this started, it was my opinion that we as a country, I'm sorry, I skipped the whole paragraph. Only in media have I seen the bubble showed up by the effects and cash of our country's enemies resist puncture. But with the new media, social platforms, even this bubble, if this bubble hasn't burst, we have seen it bypass. This podcast itself is bypassing the bubble. In fact, a personal story. I keep my emails. I do all my email on my emergency backup laptop. And as the crisis started to develop out of China, I saw a big rush on sponsored guest post requests. Now, I don't push my site as much as I could, perhaps. I don't send out daily emails. I don't constantly blast people because I think people don't like it. People get enough junk emails. They don't need to get that. And I unless I have a real problem, I don't go out begging for money. The podcast itself is out there because I started doing this to increase hits. And I wanted to try and increase my tip jar about 180, 200 a month to cover some more expenses that have come up. And so far, it's been successful. So I want to thank you guys all. And, feel free to hit the tip jar and thumbs up the podcast and send it out there when you can to give it a little bit more oomph and a little bit more stretch. But I was bombarded with sponsored guest post requests. And I would send them my price, but I would always include the following note. All posts must be approved by me. And I've been very vocal about calling this the Corona Wuhan virus. I was just calling it Corona until China started their propaganda efforts. That's why I always use the word Wuhan virus, just to make sure that they don't, at least around here, they're not going to get away with it. And once it became clear that I would have to approve the post, that I wouldn't just give somebody a publishing platform for money, they suddenly dried up. I've got plenty of junk emails from the GOP asking for money. In fact, more than I really want. I really should start blocking these domains, but I'm not going to yet because I'm going to write about it for over the course of the next couple of months. But no more requests have come in. because you're not going to buy. I mean, you can buy a space on my blog. You can put up a sponsored guest post if you're looking to increase your SEO, and we'll do it for $75. But I'm going to tell you right now that they realize they're not going to be able to buy us. And there's lots of other people in the media that can't be bought. And in the past, it's been very easy for our enemies to buy media and academic. And it made sense for them because, after all, it costs a lot more. It's less expensive than missiles, and it has a longer long-term effect. But not around here and not in other places. And that's what new media has done. Now, back to the article. When all of this started, it was my opinion that we as a country would get through it. The more I've seen of our people over the last month, the more I'm convinced that we will not just get through it, but we will thrive to agree that we didn't realize we were still capable of. Now, perhaps I see too much of the world through my father's optimistic eyes rather than my mother's realism. Or perhaps I've taken Eric Idle's advice to always look on the bright side of life too to heart. But if the last 3 years have brought back the hope that America's best years are ahead of us, the last month has turned that hope into a conviction that will require a lot of evidence to the contrary to shake. God has put us to the test. And so far, it appears that America has decided it will not be content to squeak by with a merely passing grade. I think my father would be proud, and my mother, while showing her best poker face to the world, would be pleasantly surprised. And I want to give part of that credit to Donald Trump here, because if there's one thing that Donald Trump epitomizes, it's optimism. We can do this, we can do this, we can do this. And there's been so much in our society about, we need to affirm, we need to affirm, we need to affirm. And, they were giving participation trophies for kids who were doing nothing and so forth. But when Trump affirms that America can and will succeed, people were, especially in the media, were going all nuts, and still are to some degree. America is going to succeed because Americans are still basically decent, and we've seen more. And I'm sure that anyone watching this podcast, either if you're watching live now, and I'm delighted that you decided to spend this time with us live, or who watch this later, can list examples that I can't. You've probably seen it yourself. I think that this is going to work out very well. Now, I think it's going to be, the rest of March is going to be tough. April is going to be tough. It's going to be a bad month to have my anniversary. My wife and I aren't going to be, I'm not going to even be able to take out my wife for our anniversary. But I think that we're going to get through this. And if we're able to reopen at Easter, I think it's very appropriate if we can. Because as I've said in previous podcasts, as the church teaches, you can't have an Easter Sunday without a Good Friday. You can't have the resurrection without Christ's death. A person can't rise to the occasion without a crisis. We're in a crisis right now, and we're rising to the occasion. And we're going to continue to rise to the occasion in America. I'm proud of you. I am very, very proud of you. And I'm proud of my wife as the nurse who's working very hard. I'm proud of my sons. I'm very proud of what America is doing. And I think we're going to have reasons for that pride for a long time to come. Well, that's the podcast today. I want to give you a few cleaning up hints. Remember, you catch us at DaTechGuyBlog.com. That's DaTechGuyblog.com. Starting this Friday, not this Friday, starting this Monday with the 12:30 a.m. podcast, I'm going to put a link on the site so that you can go to the site and immediately catch the podcast, click on the live stream there. That's probably the best way to do it. And again, I'm learning all this on the fly. I've not sat down and said, I'm going to study how to do this professionally and so forth. Like, there's a great thing in Don Schuber's daily update. It showed a podcast and how Colbert's doing it unprofessionally. And it showed this other person who had a screen, looked like she was behind the thing, and it was a big screen behind her. And it was just a laptop and a couple of desks. And she was just in a little room like this one. I'm not going to bother with all that stuff. First of all, I don't have the money to spend. I don't have the room in my place to create such an environment. The only room that we could do it in is the room in the corner there. That is my wife's quilting room. It is the cleanest and sharpest room in the house. it is going to remain untouched because I want to live. So, but we are going to have the live stream available right on the site. So you just go to the website, click on the latest post, the post with the live stream, and watch it there. You can catch me every Saturday on WQPH, by the way, 89.3 FM, Shirley Fitchburg. The show is Your Prayer Intentions, that live streams at WQPHradio.org. I record the show on Wednesdays. And if you have a prayer request that you want included, you can email me, or better yet, put it on the WQPH radio prayer wall, because not only will I read it on the show and will pray for it, but other people who go to the WQPH site will see it and be able to pray for your intentions. And there's actually a click-on box where it'll show how many prayers were said or what prayers were said for people. I remember my Magnificent Seven writers are still writing. I don't know how many more Baldylocks has left because she's still in California and she's limited. I don't think they've waived the gig restrictions yet, which I should check with her, see if Newsom has wised up to that degree. And if you like what you've seen, give the live stream a thumbs up. And if you really like what you've seen, go to DaTechGuyBlog.com, hit the tip jar, and subscribe. You'll notice my YouTube channel is not monetized. I've got 780-something subscribers. Can't monetize till I get to 1,000. So we're going to see if we can get to 1,000. I hope you like what you saw. Send me feedback via email. Send me feedback via Twitter. Let me know what you think, and I will try and improve it. And let me know if the new mic sounded better than the old one. I've still got the old one here as an emergency backup, and I have a third one, and God knows where it went, and he's not telling me. But that's where you can find me. That's where you can find my writers. Please show up to the site, comment, occasionally hit the tip jar, spread the stuff around, because that helps pay the bills around here. Well, again, that's all we have time for. This is Pete the Tech Guy for the Tech Guy's AM Court saying the court is adjourned. We will see you on the blog and live on this podcast stream on Monday at 12:35 a.m. See you then. Bye now. And we hit end stream. And yes, we're going to end it.